In 1998, baseball was hotter than it had been in decades. Millions of fans tuned in each night to watch the Chicago Cubs' Sammy Sosa and St. Louis Cardinals' Mark McGwire. In June of that year, Sosa hit 20 home runs in 1 month, more than any player in baseball at the time, a record that still stands today. By the start of July, Sosa had hit a total of 33 home runs, while McGwire, his rival, entered the month with 37. By August, Sosa had nearly caught up with McGwire, totaling 44 home runs to McGwire's 47. And by the end of the month, they were tied at 55 home runs each. No player had hit more than 61 home runs in a season since Roger Maris set the record back in 1961, and both Sosa and McGwire were on pace to break it. Over the summer, they became household names, and the most famous athletes in not just America but the world. Baseball exploded in popularity, and so did merchandise. I remember buying a plastic bat with McGwire's handprints on it just because the commercial claimed it would help me hit a home run.
Vortex power bat.
Last out, batter. You're gonna lose.
Not this time.
I got the Vortex power bat.
McGwire.
Only the Vortex power bat is air pressurized for a home run power.
Then, on September 8th, it happened. In a game against Sosa's Cubs, McGwire hit his 62nd home run, breaking Maris's record with Maris's family in attendance to witness the historic moment.
Line, is it enough? Gone! There it is! 62! Touch first, Mark. You are the new single-season home run king.
It was one of the biggest moments in baseball history. Ironically, McGwire's 62nd home run was the shortest of the season. It barely cleared the fence. A member of the Busch Stadium grounds crew obtained the ball, which could have fetched millions at auction, but instead of selling it, he returned it to McGwire for free.
You know, I thought I was going to hit the wall, and next thing you know, it disappeared, and I looked up, and Dave McKay was jumping up, and sort of like missed one big thing, touch first base. So I had to go back and touch it. And honestly, to tell you, it's the first time that, well, at least I think I missed it. The first time I ever had to do that. So, but I'll tell you what, I'll always remember that. And it was a sweet, sweet run around the bases.
Rex, go ahead.
However, the season wasn't over. McGwire went the next 6 games without hitting another home run, allowing Sosa to catch up. The two continued to battle for the lead in the final weeks.
It is a distinct possibility that this is his last at bat of 1998. But take a good long look. This is going to have to last you until next March in Florida. First and third, 2 out. Into the field! Number 70! How much more can you give us, Big Mac? Number 70!
At the end of the season, McGwire finished with 70 home runs, and he made baseball the most popular sport in America again. Since the players' strike of 1994, interest in Major League Baseball had been waning. But the chase to break Maris's record restored the sport's popularity. But was it all built on lies and deception?
Last week, McGwire sparked a controversy when he admitted that he had been taking androstenedione, or Andro, for more than a year.
Androstenedione, when it's converted to testosterone, will give you bigger, bulkier, more powerful muscles, capable of more endurance, and of course more power.
Andro is legal and sold over the counter. Because it falls into the category of a dietary supplement, the Food and Drug Administration does not regulate it. Professional basketball and baseball permit its use, but football and the Olympics have banned it, in part because its chemical structure is so similar to testosterone.
The first hint that something was wrong came when writer Steve Wilstein noticed a strange bottle in Mark McGwire's locker. Wilstein was waiting to interview McGuire, who had left his locker open while visiting a trainer. Inside, he saw a picture of McGuire's son, a pack of gum, a hat, and a bottle of androstenedione, an over-the-counter steroid banned in the NFL, the NCAA, and the Olympics. Known as Andro, it would eventually be banned from over-the-counter sales altogether. Wilstein didn't know what it was at the time, so he didn't report it. However, when he reached out to McGuire for comment, McGuire admitted to using the substance and claimed that everyone he knew was using it. Wilstein was accused of invading McGuire's privacy by the Cardinals manager, and MLB Commissioner Bud Selig didn't even know what androstenedione was. Selig downplayed the incident, fearing it would bring negative attention to the sport during a time when baseball's popularity was soaring.
Andro is still legal in baseball, and many players use it without McGuire's results. His coach is angry that the controversy is undermining McGuire's assault on the home run record.
This guy goes to the gym every day and works. All that hard work is being tainted by crap like this.
Fans at the ballpark agree.
If it's legal, do it. That's just smart. That's not stupid.
All the power to him. I hope he hits another one.
By October 1998, sales of androstenedione had spiked across the country.
Jose Canseco, variously called the bad boy of baseball or the godfather of steroids, has written a much-talked-about book he calls Juiced, that purports to tell the truth about his own use of anabolic steroids and human growth hormone, and the same about other top players in the major leagues.
Though many baseball fans suspected that some players were using steroids, it wasn't until former player Jose Canseco brought global attention to the issue with his book, Juiced: Wild Times, Rampant Roids, Smash Hits, and How Baseball Got Big. In the book, Canseco not only admitted to using steroids, but also named other players, including McGuire, and claimed that steroids actually made the game better. It was well known that Canseco had been using steroids since the 1980s, when he played AAA ball, and he even referred to himself as the godfather of steroids. Canseco also claimed that Major League Baseball essentially forced him into retirement because they were aware of his association with the drug. Canseco and McGuire had been teammates and friends while on the Oakland Athletics in the late 80s and early 90s. Together, they were known as the Bash Brothers and would hit the gym as soon as the games were over. It was during this time that they met bodybuilder and trainer Curtis Winsleff. After the A's lost the 1988 World Series to the Dodgers, Winsleff began providing Canseco and McGuire performance-enhancing drugs. Winsleff had access to high-grade steroids, including creams that could be rubbed on wrists and arms. The A's soon became the most dominant team in baseball, returning to the World Series in 1989 where they defeated the San Francisco Giants, and again in 1990 where they lost to the Cincinnati Reds. By the early 90s, Winsleff was selling steroids to an estimated 20 to 30 players. It's important to note that steroids did not officially violate Major League Baseball's rules until 1991, the same year that U.S. Congress passed laws restricting their use. Winsleff was arrested in 1992 when a gym owner he had been selling to set him up with the FBI. The agent who arrested Winsleff was Greg Stajowski, and he learned of his celebrity's clients, but kept the information quiet for 2 years before finally sharing it with Major League Baseball's head of security, Kevin Hollonen. Stajowski claims that Major League Baseball seemed uninterested and said that they already knew about Canseco and others using steroids. One of those rumored players was Phillies outfielder Lenny Dykstra, who was alleged to have been purchasing steroids from bodybuilder Jeff Scott, a man who had recently gotten out of jail for cocaine trafficking. In 1993, Dykstra led the Phillies to the World Series and finished second to Barry Bonds in MVP voting. By the late 90s, team doctors began noticing a troubling trend. From 1989 to 1998, the average number of players on the disabled list increased by 31%. The most common injuries were strained rib cages and torn hamstrings, injuries that were more common in players using steroids due to oversized muscles, which were more prone to tearing away from the bone that couldn't support them. In 1998, at a meeting between doctors and the Players Union, Bill Wilder, the medical director for the Cleveland Indians, requested that information about dangerous steroids and their side effects be sent to all players as a precaution. However, the Players Union denied the request, claiming that more research needed to be done. They wouldn't let him even send pamphlets out saying that steroids were dangerous. One of the reasons Major League Baseball and its executives were unable to act more decisively was resistance from the Players Union and their fear of another strike. In March of 2001, after more than a decade of widespread steroid use, Selig finally agreed to start drug testing, but only in the minor leagues. When the results came back, about 11% of players tested positive for steroids. Selig knew that it was time to start testing in the majors, but the Players Union continued to argue with him, saying that tested suspected players was an invasion of privacy. Around the same time, Canseco told a Fox News reporter that he believed that it was actually 85% of Major League Baseball players using steroids. Players and owners eventually agreed to one random test per player each year. One of the first players to test positive under this new system was Yankee star Jason Giambi, who had been teammates with Canseco and McGuire. Giambi's trainer Greg Anderson was also linked to Barry Bonds, another star player who would later be implicated in steroid use. Anderson had been in contact with Victor Conte, who ran the Bay Area Laboratory Cooperative, also known as BALCO. Conte began providing Giambi with steroids for about a year, until federal agents raided his office on September 3, 2003. They also raided Greg Anderson's apartment and found over $60,000 and a calendar that had Jason Giambi's name on it, as well as another superstar, who was arguably the best player in baseball at the time, and a man whose autographed picture was on the wall of BALCO owner Victor Conte's office. None other than San Francisco Giants superstar Barry Bonds.
There's a high drive, deep into right center field, to the big part of the ballpark. Number 71, and what a shot! Over the 421-foot marker. The deepest part of any ballpark in the National League. And Barry Bonds is now the home run king, number 71, and it was impressive.
Barry Bonds had just recently broke Mark McGwire's home run record and was on track to potentially break Hank Aaron's record for career home runs. Giambi was called to testify before a federal grand jury about BALCO and Victor Conte. After leaving the court, he was hounded by reporters who asked him questions about it, but Giambi would deny to the press that he ever used steroids. However, during the grand jury hearing, he was asked if he had used them, and Giambi confirmed that he actually had. And so did Giambi's teammate Gary Sheffield, who had also recently been suspended. The publication of Canseco's book stirred up even more interest in baseball's shadowy drug scene. In the book, Canseco alleges that he introduced steroids to many popular players, including Mark McGwire, Juan Gonzalez, Rafael Palmeiro, Ivan Rodriguez, Roger Clemens, and Jason Giambi. His book and the controversy it stirred got the attention of Congress. Canseco, Palmeiro, McGwire, Sosa, and pitcher Curt Schilling were subpoenaed by Congress to testify about the allegations. One of the congressmen that was a part of that hearing was future presidential candidate Bernie Sanders. Canseco was the only player to admit to using steroids. McGwire and Sosa gave extremely vague answers. Schilling claimed that he had never even seen a player use them in his entire career.
Here today, in 19 years in the big leagues, I have never seen a syringe other than one prescribed by a doctor to a player. I have never seen steroids.
But in locker room gossip, you may not have seen it. People talk.
Canseco was extremely upset by Palmero's testimony because Canseco later claimed that he showed Palmero how to use the steroids and even injected Palmero with them. A year later, Mark Fanaru and Lance Williams of the San Francisco Chronicle would publish a book titled Game of Shadows. The main focus of the book was Barry Bonds and his relationship with Victor Conte and BALCO. It had long been suspected by many that Bonds had been using steroids. Prior to breaking McGwire's home run record, he had never hit more than 50 home runs in one season. After the publication of Game of Shadows, the U.S. Congress once again became interested in baseball and pressured Commissioner Bud Selig to do more. So Selig hired former Senate Majority Leader George Mitchell to fully investigate the problem. Prior to being a senator, Mitchell was a feared federal prosecutor and judge. He spent 20 months conducting in-depth research with many people on multiple teams. But the Major League Baseball Players Association was uncooperative and encouraged players not to work with him, and telling them that anything they said may not be kept confidential. The only player who volunteered to be interviewed by Mitchell was Frank Thomas of the Toronto Blue Jays. Giambi interviewed with Mitchell, but only because he was required to by Commissioner Selig because of his involvement in BALCO. On December 13, 2007, Mitchell published his report, where he named 89 players who were believed to have used steroids. Some of the players named include Bonds, Giambi, Sheffield, Roger Clemens, Andy Pettitte, Miguel Tejada, and Canseco.
The evidence we uncovered indicates that this has not been an isolated problem involving just a few players or a few clubs. Many players were involved. Each of the 30 clubs has had players who have been involved with such substances at some time in their careers.
Former Mets bat boy Kurt Radomski proved to be a critical witness for Mitchell. He had been arrested for selling drugs and money laundering and was facing 30 years in prison. Radomski agreed to cooperate with Mitchell in exchange for a lighter sentence of just 5 years probation. Trainer Brian McNamee was also interviewed extensively and made many allegations about pitchers Clemens and Pettitte. Roger Clemens is considered to be one of the greatest pitchers of all time and has won 7 Cy Young Awards, more than anyone else. Shortly after being accused of using steroids, Clemens issued a statement denying ever using them and even filed a defamation lawsuit against McNamee. Clemens ended up being called before Congress, where he stated under oath that the allegations against him were false. He was later charged with perjury, but was ultimately acquitted. Barry Bonds was also charged with perjury for lying about using steroids during the testimony he made in the BALCO investigation years before. Unlike Clemens, Bonds was actually convicted, but it was later overturned on appeal. Mitchell's report also revealed that after Major League Baseball started testing for steroids, many users switched to HGH, human growth hormones, which were not detectable by Major League Baseball's tests. A few years after the publication of Mitchell's report, Alex Rodriguez, the youngest player to ever hit 500 home runs and one of the highest paid athletes in the world, admitted that he had used steroids. This admission came 2 days after Sports Illustrated reported that Rodriguez had tested positive back in 2003. Prior to the Sports Illustrated article, Rodriguez had denied ever using steroids.
Press. McGwire says that he used steroids on and off for nearly a decade, and he apologizes for his actions.
I apologize to everybody in Major League Baseball. My family, the Marises, Bud Selig. Today was the hardest day of my life.
In 2010, Mark McGwire finally admitted that he had used steroids on and off again throughout the late 80s and 90s, finally confirming something that we had already all known. Rafael Palmeiro tested positive for steroids back in 2005, but claimed the positive test was a result of a tainted B12 injection. Even to this day, he continues to claim that's what happened, and even passed a lie detector test. As for Sammy Sosa, the New York Times reported that in 2003, Sosa had tested positive for steroids. This was 2 years prior to when he went before Congress and testified that he had never taken them. Despite being considered among the greatest players in the history of baseball, Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa, Roger Clemens, and Barry Bonds have never been inducted into the Hall of Fame, largely due to their association with steroids. Prior to the Mitchell report, Major League Baseball had only one unannounced mandatory test each year for every player. Now, baseball tests are unannounced twice a year, and the tests are much better. They can even detect HGH now. The first positive test now results in an 80-game suspension. The second is 162 games, which is a full season, and a third positive results in a lifetime suspension from Major League Baseball. Even though Major League Baseball has now made a concerted effort to address steroids, there is still a huge debate about player records. Although he used steroids, Barry Bonds still remains Major League Baseball's home run champion, and records set by other players like Sosa and Clemens remain as well. In some sports, when players are caught cheating, their entire records and awards are taken from them. Lance Armstrong was a cyclist who won 7 consecutive Tour de France championships, but after it was revealed that he used performance-enhancing drugs, those championships were taken from him. If you look up those 7 races, you will see that they have no official winner now. Marion Jones won 3 gold medals at the 2000 Olympics in Sydney, Australia, but after admitting to using steroids, she was disqualified and the medals were taken from her. She received her performance-enhancing drugs from BALCO, the same place that Bonds got his. One problem with erasing these records is that regardless of how it happened, it still happened. And one could argue that Major League Baseball itself knew about the problem and did little to stop it because of the attention all the home runs were getting. If we go down this road, we also have to question if every player in history played fair or was treated fair. Barry Bonds hit 48 more home runs than Babe Ruth, but baseball seasons were shorter when Ruth played, so Bonds went to bat almost 1,500 times more than the great Bambino. It is also impossible to know for certain how many home runs Bonds hit while using steroids. Several players like Palmeiro are still maintaining their innocence despite failing drug tests. Perhaps the biggest question is whether they belong in the Hall of Fame, because regardless of what these players did, it is unquestionable that they had a tremendous influence on the game. So what do you think? Should they ever be allowed in the Hall of Fame? Let me know in the comments, and thank you for watching.